Why won't you sit at the piano bench, Mr. Johnson? Mrs. Harrington's voice cut through the silence of the classroom, dripping with condescension. Marcus felt every eye on him as the pain in his back, a cruel reminder of another teacher's discipline, throbbed like a warning. Little did this arrogant instructor know that the man she was trying to humiliate had once made Carnegie Hall weep with his rendition of Rachmaninoff's most challenging concerto. What happens when prejudice blinds someone to extraordinary talent standing right before them? And what price will be paid when that talent is finally revealed? This story will leave you breathless, questioning everything you thought you knew about talent, privilege, and the true power of music. Don't miss a single moment of this emotional journey. Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published new stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. Marcus Johnson stood outside Golden Hills Community College, clutching his registration papers. At 25, he was older than most students, but life had taken him on a different path. 5 years ago, he'd been at Juilliard, his fingers dancing across piano keys like they belonged there. Now, he was starting over. You sure about this? Thomas asked, adjusting his backpack. At 17, Marcus's younger brother looked up to him with unwavering faith. Yeah, I'm sure, Marcus replied, though uncertainty gnawed at him. It's just a basic piano class to get me back into it. After their parents' accident, Marcus had abandoned his promising career to raise Thomas. The piano, once his life, became a distant memory, played only late at night when Thomas was asleep. You should tell them who you are, Thomas suggested. Marcus shook his head. I don't want special treatment. Besides, it's been years. As they approached the registration desk, a woman with steel-gray hair and perfect posture walked by. Mrs. Elizabeth Harrington, according to her name badge. She glanced at Marcus, her eyes lingering a moment too long before continuing down the hallway. Piano studies, beginner level. The registration clerk looked confused. Are you sure? Yes, Marcus said firmly. I'm a beginner. The lie felt strange on his tongue. That evening, after Thomas went to bed, Marcus uncovered their mother's old upright piano. His fingers trembled as they found familiar positions. Then, as if no time had passed, he began to play Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor. The notes flowed from memory, each crescendo and diminuendo executed with precision that would make his former professors weep. When he finished, he noticed Thomas standing in the doorway. Why are you hiding who you are? Thomas asked quietly. Marcus closed the piano lid gently. I'm not hiding. I'm just finding my way back carefully. That night, as Marcus lay in bed, he wondered if he was making a mistake. The music world had once been his future. Now, it was just a class at a community college, a small step toward reclaiming a piece of himself. Tomorrow would be his first class with Mrs. Harrington. Something about her gaze had unsettled him, but he pushed the thought away. This was just a class. How difficult could it be? The piano classroom at Golden Hills Community College had 10 upright pianos arranged in a semicircle, with Mrs. Harrington's grand piano as the centerpiece. Marcus arrived early, choosing a seat away from any instrument. Students filtered in, mostly young adults with a few older faces. A young Asian woman sat beside him, offering a friendly smile. I'm Sophia, she whispered. First time? Marcus nodded. Marcus. Yeah, just starting. Mrs. Harrington entered precisely at 9 a.m., her heels clicking against the floor. She surveyed the room with piercing blue eyes, taking attendance with military precision. Marcus Johnson, she called, eyebrow raised when she saw him. Present, he answered. She stared as if trying to solve a puzzle. You're not sitting at a piano. All eyes turned to him. I prefer to observe first. This is a piano class, Mr. Johnson, not a spectator sport. Her voice carried an edge. Please take your place at station 3. Marcus hesitated. I have back pain. Sitting on piano benches is difficult for me. Mrs. Harrington's lips thinned. Back pain. Yet you enrolled in a piano course requiring hours of practice. I can stand, Marcus began. Ridiculous, she interrupted. If you can't sit at a piano, perhaps this isn't the class for you. Sophia whispered, she always does this to someone. Marcus remembered his previous encounter with his composition teacher, Ms. Reynolds, at the community center. Her harsh dismissal and the painful switch she'd used on his lower back when he'd questioned her teaching methods had left both physical and emotional scars. I'd like to stay, Marcus said firmly. I can adapt. Mrs. Harrington's eyes narrowed. Very well. For today, you may observe. But in my classroom, everyone participates. Throughout the lesson, she pointedly ignored Marcus while lavishing attention on others, particularly a blonde girl who played a simple Mozart piece with obvious mistakes that went uncorrected. When class ended, Mrs. Harrington called out, Mr. Johnson, a moment. As others filed out, Sophia gave him a sympathetic glance. Mr. Johnson, Mrs. Harrington said once they were alone, I've taught piano for 30 years. I can spot talent, and those without it. If you're here to fulfill an arts credit, perhaps consider something less demanding. Marcus met her gaze. I want to learn piano. Do you even know how to read music? Yes, ma'am. She sighed. Next class, you will sit at a piano and demonstrate. Otherwise, I'll recommend your transfer to another course. Understood? Marcus nodded, feeling the familiar weight of prejudgment settling on his shoulders. Outside, Sophia was waiting. Don't take it personally. She does this every semester, pick someone to make an example of. Why me? Marcus asked, though he suspected the answer. Sophia glanced away. Let's just say you don't fit her idea of a traditional pianist. Marcus laughed humorlessly. I've heard that before. The apartment was quiet when Marcus returned home, save for the muffled sounds of Thomas's video game from the bedroom. Their two-bedroom walk-up wasn't much, but it was theirs, a sanctuary Marcus had worked hard to provide after their parents' death. How'd it go? Thomas called out, pausing his game as Marcus dropped his bag. About as expected, Marcus replied, rolling his shoulders to ease the tension. He didn't mention Mrs. Harrington's condescension or the painful memories of Ms. Reynolds that had resurfaced. Thomas worried enough about him. Did you play? Not today. Marcus headed to the kitchen, where bills were stacked neatly beside a framed photo of their parents at Marcus's first major recital. He'd been 12, already marked as a prodigy. You cooking tonight? Thomas appeared in the doorway, lanky frame leaning against it with teenage nonchalance that couldn't hide his concern. Yeah. Homework done. Thomas rolled his eyes. Almost. Biology lab report left. Finish it while I cook. College applications are due soon. As Marcus prepared dinner, his mind wandered to Juilliard, the prestige, the pressure, the possibilities. Professor Williams had called him the most naturally gifted pianist he'd encountered in 30 years. Then came the accident, the funeral, the 17-year-old suddenly responsible for a 12-year-old brother. No regrets, though. Thomas was worth everything. After dinner and dishes, Thomas retreated to finish homework. Marcus eyed the piano in the corner of their small living room, a Yamaha upright their mother had taught him on, before more prestigious teachers took over. It wasn't the Steinway he trained on at Juilliard, but its voice was true. He sat at the bench, wincing slightly at the pressure on his lower back where the welts from Ms. Reynolds' switch had never fully healed mentally. His fingers found the keys, and he began with scales, simple, meditative. Then Bach's Prelude in C major, followed by increasingly complex pieces until he lost himself in Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, the piece Mrs. Harrington would likely consider beyond her students' capabilities. His fingers flew across the keys, muscle memory intact despite the years away. The apartment vanished, he was on stage again, orchestra behind him, Professor Williams nodding approvingly from the wings. You should tell her, Thomas said, startling Marcus from his reverie. He stood in the doorway, biology textbook forgotten. It's not that simple, Marcus replied, letting the final notes hang in the air. Because she's racist? Marcus sighed. We don't know that. She's just, set in her ways. Like Ms. Reynolds was? Before she, that was different, Marcus interrupted. Besides, this is just a community college class. It doesn't matter what she thinks. Thomas sat beside him on the bench. Then why take it at all? You could be performing. Teaching. Anything. Marcus stared at the keys, ivory and ebony reflecting their shared history. I need to find my way back slowly. The music world, it's not always kind to people who leave. Or to black men who don't fit the classical pianist mold, he added silently. Play something else, Thomas requested. Something Mom liked. Marcus smiled and began Debussy's Clair de Lune, their mother's favorite. As the gentle notes filled their small apartment, he wondered what tomorrow's class would bring. Mrs. Harrington expected a fumbling novice. She'd be disappointed, or perhaps shocked, to discover otherwise. But revealing his abilities meant answering questions about his past, about Juilliard, about why a former prodigy was taking a beginner piano class at a community college. Some secrets were better kept. At least for now. The second class arrived too quickly. Marcus entered the room to find Mrs. Harrington already seated at her grand piano, watching students filter in like a hawk eyeing potential prey. Her gaze hardened when it fell on him. Mr. Johnson, she called as he tried to slip into the same seat as before. I believe we had an agreement. Piano 3 is available. The room quieted. Marcus felt every eye on him as he reluctantly moved to the assigned piano, his back already protesting the impending discomfort. Today, Mrs. Harrington announced, we'll assess individual abilities. Everyone will play the C major scale, followed by the simple piece I distributed last class. Marcus glanced at the sheet music on his piano, a basic exercise for beginners. He'd mastered such pieces at age 5. One by one, students performed. Some struggled with the scale, others managed the simple piece with varying success. Mrs. Harrington offered stern but constructive criticism to most, except Sophia, whose minor mistakes earned disproportionate reprimands. Perhaps more practice and less socializing would improve your performance, Ms. Chen, Mrs. Harrington remarked coldly. Sophia's cheeks flushed, but she remained silent. When Marcus's turn came, Mrs. Harrington's smile was thin. Mr. Johnson, please demonstrate your current ability. Marcus positioned himself carefully at the bench, minimizing pressure on his tender spots. He began the C major scale flawlessly, then paused before the simple piece. Problem, Mr. Johnson? Mrs. Harrington asked with false concern. Marcus made a split-second decision. He would play the piece, not as written, but with just enough imperfection to appear as a talented beginner rather than the virtuoso he was. His fingers moved deliberately, missing occasional notes, simplifying the rhythm. Mrs. Harrington's expression shifted from smug anticipation to slight confusion. Your technique suggests previous training, yet your execution is inconsistent. I took lessons as a child, Marcus admitted. A partial truth. I see. Her tone suggested she didn't believe him. Continue practicing this piece. You've clearly forgotten more than you remember. After class, Mrs. Harrington disappeared into the department office. Through the glass window, Marcus saw her speaking animatedly to an older man with a beard, Dr. Townsend, according to the door plaque. She gestured in Marcus's direction several times, her expression severe. She's reporting you, Sophia said, appearing beside him. She does this when students challenge her worldview. I barely played anything, Marcus protested. You played better than her favorite student, Brian. That's enough. Sophia adjusted her backpack. Watch out for Dr. Townsend. He usually backs her up. As if summoned, the office door opened, and Dr. Townsend emerged. Mr. Johnson. A word, please. In the cramped office, Dr. Townsend studied Marcus over steepled fingers. Mrs. Harrington has concerns about your participation. I participated today, Marcus replied evenly. Yes, but she mentions your reluctance to sit at the piano, your mysterious back pain, and what she perceives as an attitude problem. Marcus stiffened. I have documented medical issues, sir. And I've been nothing but respectful. Dr. Townsend sighed. Mrs. Harrington has taught here for 20 years. Her judgment of student potential is rarely wrong. Is she suggesting I drop the class? Not yet. But she feels you may be out of place here. The implications hung heavy in the air. Marcus had heard similar phrases throughout his musical education, always carefully worded, never explicitly mentioning race, yet somehow always directed at him. I'd like to continue the class, Marcus said firmly. I'm committed to learning. Dr. Townsend nodded, though his expression remained skeptical. Very well. But please, make an effort to fit in better. Outside, Marcus let out a long breath. 5 years ago, he'd been performing concertos at Lincoln Center. Now he was being told to fit in to a beginner piano class. The irony wasn't lost on him. He actually said, fit in. Sophia's eyes widened as she stirred her coffee. They sat in the campus cafe the following day, an hour before class. Marcus nodded. Not the first time I've heard it. That's terrible. She hesitated. Can I ask about your back? You don't have to answer. Marcus stared into his cup. Few people knew the full story, but something about Sophia's genuine concern made him willing to share. A previous teacher. At a community center where I took music theory. She had traditional methods. She hit you. Sophia's voice dropped to a horrified whisper. She called it corrective discipline. I questioned her analysis of a Bach composition. Marcus shrugged, as if it were nothing. Most students complied out of fear. When I reported her, the administration dismissed it. She had connections. Sophia reached across the table, briefly touching his hand. I'm sorry. It was years ago. Still. She pulled back, considering him. There's more to your story, isn't there? You don't play like someone who just took lessons as a child. Marcus changed the subject. Why does Harrington have it out for you too? Sophia accepted the deflection. First-generation Chinese American who doesn't fit her model minority stereotype. I love piano but also play in a rock band. She found out and suggested I lacked commitment to proper music. They shared a laugh, the tension easing. We should practice together sometime, Sophia suggested. Marcus hesitated. I don't have much time outside class. My brother, I get it. She gathered her things. But the offer stands. In class, Mrs. Harrington was especially critical. She hovered behind Marcus as he deliberately played beneath his ability, her dissatisfaction palpable. Your posture is atrocious, Mr. Johnson. No wonder your back troubles you. When Marcus adjusted slightly, she shook her head. No, no. Like this. She reached to physically reposition him. Marcus flinched involuntarily. She stepped back, eyebrow raised. I was merely offering correction. I prefer verbal instruction, Marcus said quietly. Perhaps if you'd received proper training earlier, you wouldn't need so much correction now. From across the room, Sophia spoke up. Mrs. Harrington, I'm having trouble with measure 16. Could you help me instead? The diversion worked. Mrs. Harrington moved away, though not without a parting glance at Marcus that clearly said their interaction wasn't finished. After class, Marcus caught up to Sophia. Thanks for that. No problem. She was out of line. Sophia hesitated. Listen, there's a department recital next month. Harrington students are expected to participate. Marcus felt his stomach drop. A recital? Nothing major. Just students playing for parents and faculty. She lowered her voice. But be prepared. She'll use it to weed out anyone she doesn't want in her program. As they parted ways, Marcus considered his options. He could continue the charade, playing below his ability. He could drop the class entirely. Or he could show who he really was. None seemed right. The first prolonged a lie. The second felt like surrender. And the third would invite questions he wasn't ready to answer. For now, he'd continue as he had been. Thomas needed stability, not another upheaval. Marcus's dreams of returning to music would have to wait a little longer. Besides, how much worse could one community college recital be? The announcement came 3 weeks into the semester. Mrs. Harrington stood before the class, her posture perfect as always, a slight smile playing at her lips. The department recital will be held next Friday evening. Each student will perform one piece demonstrating their progress. Her gaze swept the room, lingering on Marcus. Attendance is mandatory. After class, she distributed assignment sheets. When she reached Marcus, her smile tightened. Mr. Johnson, I've selected a special piece for you. Marcus looked down at the sheet and froze. Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, First Movement. There must be a mistake, he said quietly. No mistake. Mrs. Harrington's voice carried enough for nearby students to hear. You claimed previous experience. I'm simply providing an opportunity to demonstrate it. Marcus stared at the infamous composition, one of the most technically demanding pieces in the classical repertoire. A piece he had mastered years ago at Juilliard but hadn't performed since. This is far beyond beginner level, he protested. Perhaps, she conceded with false sweetness. Consider it a challenge. Unless you feel incapable. The implication hung in the air. Around them, students whispered. From across the room, Sophia watched with concern. Ms. Collins and I were discussing your situation, Mrs. Harrington continued, nodding toward a younger teacher who had entered the room. She suggested this might motivate you to either demonstrate your true ability or admit your limitations. Ms. Collins, a thin woman with sharp features, observed from the doorway with thinly veiled contempt. It's for your own good, really. Some students simply aren't suited for classical training. Marcus recognized the trap. If he refused, he confirmed their prejudice. If he attempted the piece and failed, the same result. And if he played it perfectly. I'll practice it, he said finally. Mrs. Harrington's smile widened. Excellent. Though perhaps with your back issues, such a demanding piece might prove too difficult. As students filed out, Sophia caught up to him. That was completely unfair. That piece is for advanced pianists. She knows I can't play it, Marcus replied, keeping his voice low. That's the point. You should report her, Sophia insisted. Marcus laughed bitterly. To whom? Dr. Townsend? He's already taken her side. Then drop the class. This is harassment. They reached the building exit, stepping into autumn sunshine that belied Marcus's darkening mood. I can't drop it, he admitted. I need this credit, and there are no other sections this semester. Then what will you do? Marcus considered his options as they walked toward the parking lot. He could play terribly, confirming Mrs. Harrington's expectations but completing the class. He could drop out, delaying his education further. Or he could play the piece as it was meant to be played, revealing his true abilities. Each choice carried consequences he wasn't sure he was ready to face. I don't know yet, he answered honestly. That evening, after Thomas went to bed, Marcus pulled out the Rachmaninoff score, not Mrs. Harrington's copy, but his own, worn and marked with his professor's notations from years ago. His fingers traced the familiar passages, muscle memory stirring. He sat at the piano, positioning himself carefully to avoid aggravating his back. Then, quietly, he began to play. The notes came back to him as if he'd never stopped, the thunderous opening, the lyrical second theme, the technically demanding development. His fingers danced across the keys with precision born of thousands of hours of practice. When he finished the first movement, he sat in silence, emotions warring within him. Pride at still being able to play. Anger at having to hide his ability. Fear of what revealing it might mean. His phone buzzed with a text from Sophia, "Whatever you decide, I've got your back." Unlike Harrington, who's just trying to break it. Marcus smiled despite himself. Tomorrow, he would decide. Tonight, he would play, not for Mrs. Harrington, not for an audience, but for himself. For the first time in years, the music felt like his again. The week before the recital passed in a blur of classes, work, and sleepless nights. During piano sessions, Marcus continued his charade, fumbling through simple exercises while Mrs. Harrington watched with thinly veiled contempt. Not once did she mention the Rachmaninoff, though the assignment sheet remained in his folder, a ticking time bomb. 3 days before the recital, Thomas found Marcus at the piano, staring at the keys without playing. "You haven't decided yet, have you?" Thomas asked, sitting beside his brother. Marcus shook his head. "If I play it, really play it, everything changes." "Would that be so bad?" Thomas nudged his shoulder. "You're miserable pretending to be less than you are." "It's complicated." Marcus closed the piano lid gently. "If I reveal my background, there will be questions. About Juilliard. About why I left." "You left for me." Thomas's voice was quiet. "You shouldn't be ashamed of that." "I'm not," Marcus assured him. "But once people know, they'll expect things from me again. Performances. Competitions. A career I walked away from. Maybe that's not a bad thing." Thomas stood, pacing the small living room. "You gave up everything for me. Maybe it's time to take something back." Marcus watched his brother, no longer the traumatized 12-year-old who'd lost his parents, but a young man with wisdom beyond his years. "When did you get so smart?" "Learn from the best." Thomas paused. "Play it for me. The whole thing." Marcus hesitated, then reopened the piano. As he played the Rachmaninoff from memory, he lost himself in the music, the apartment dissolving around him. For those 14 minutes, he was on stage again, orchestra behind him, audience captivated. When the final notes faded, he looked up to find Thomas wiping away tears. "That's who you are," Thomas said firmly. "Not the guy fumbling through, 'Mary had a little lamb,' for some racist teacher. We don't know for sure she's, please." Thomas rolled his eyes. "I've seen enough to recognize it." The next morning, Sophia was waiting for him before class, concern evident in her expression. "Have you made a decision?" she asked as they walked toward the music building. "The recital's tomorrow." "Still thinking," Marcus admitted. "Whatever you decide, I support you." "But..." She hesitated. "I heard Mrs. Harrington and Ms. Collins talking yesterday. They're planning to use your failure as proof the department should be more selective in admissions." Marcus stopped walking. "What exactly did they say?" Sophia glanced around before lowering her voice. "Some students simply don't have the cultural background to appreciate classical music properly." That's a direct quote. Anger flared in Marcus's chest, a familiar feeling from his years in classical music circles where similar sentiments were often expressed in carefully coded language. "So it's not just me," he said quietly. "It never is," Sophia replied, understanding immediately. "They're trying to establish precedent. You're just the current target." That evening, Marcus sat at the piano for hours, playing through the Rachmaninoff again and again. Each time, his resolve strengthened. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about every student who'd been underestimated, every talent dismissed due to prejudice. When Thomas returned from his part-time job, he found Marcus still at the piano, but with a different energy, determined, focused. "You've decided," Thomas observed. Marcus nodded. "I'm playing it. The real way." Thomas's face broke into a grin. "About time." "But," Marcus added, I need you to do something for me tomorrow." As he explained his plan, Marcus felt a weight lifting. For years, he'd kept his talent hidden, believing he was protecting his new life with Thomas. Now he realized he hadn't been living, merely existing. Tomorrow would change that. For better or worse, Marcus Johnson was about to show Golden Hills Community College exactly who he was. The music department buzzed with activity on recital day. Students practiced nervously in every available space, while faculty members directed the setup of the auditorium. At the center of it all, Mrs. Harrington supervised with military precision, clipboard in hand. "The program order is final," she announced to the gathered students. "Each performer has exactly 5 minutes. Exceeding your time will result in grade penalties." Her gaze found Marcus. "Some pieces, of course, are naturally longer. Those performers will simply need to select appropriate excerpts." The Rachmaninoff first movement ran approximately 14 minutes, impossible to condense to 5 without destroying it. The message was clear: Marcus was being set up to fail regardless of his technical ability. Dr. Townsend appeared, looking harried. "Elizabeth, a word." They conferred in hushed tones, with occasional glances toward the students. Marcus caught fragments: last-minute change, important guest, department reputation. Mrs. Harrington's face tightened. "Students," she called, "there's been a development. Mr. James Wilson will be attending tonight's recital." A murmur ran through the group. Even Marcus felt his heart skip. James Wilson was a world-renowned pianist, a frequent performer with major symphonies worldwide. "Mr. Wilson is considering establishing a scholarship for our department," Dr. Townsend explained. "Tonight's performances will influence his decision." Mrs. Harrington's smile didn't reach her eyes. "All the more reason to present our best work. Ms. Collins will distribute revised programs." The young teacher handed out the updated schedules. Marcus scanned his, noting he'd been moved to last, after all other students and just before the departmental announcements. The perfect position to be forgotten or, if he failed spectacularly, to end the evening on a sour note. As students dispersed to practice, Ms. Collins approached Marcus. "Mrs. Harrington suggested you might want to consider a different piece. Given the prestigious audience." "I'll play what was assigned," Marcus replied evenly. She smiled thinly. "Your funeral." Throughout the day, Marcus observed the department's transformation. Fresh flowers appeared in the lobby. The grand piano on stage received an emergency tuning. Dr. Townsend practiced his welcome speech in an empty classroom, adjusting his tie repeatedly. By late afternoon, Marcus found himself alone in a practice room, staring at the Rachmaninoff score without playing. The piece was ingrained in his muscle memory, but doubt crept in. 5 years was a long time away from serious performance. What if his technique had deteriorated? What if, after all this build-up, he simply wasn't as good as he remembered? A knock interrupted his thoughts. Sophia entered, dressed for the evening in a simple black dress. "Nervous?" she asked. "Terrified," he admitted. She sat beside him on the bench. "I did some research on you last night." Marcus tensed. "What do you mean?" "YouTube has a wonderful archive of Juilliard student recitals." She met his gaze. "Your Chopin was breathtaking." Silence stretched between them. "Why didn't you tell me?" she finally asked. "It's complicated." "Try me." Marcus sighed. "After my parents died, I left school to take care of my brother. I thought it would be temporary, but..." He gestured vaguely. "Life happened. Years passed. The classical world doesn't forgive disappearances." "So you're hiding at a community college, pretending to be a beginner?" Put that way, it sounded ridiculous. "I wanted to ease back into music without expectations." Sophia's expression softened. "And instead you got Mrs. Harrington. Cosmic joke, right?" He attempted a smile. "Does she know who you are?" "I don't think so. She's prejudiced, not psychic." Sophia checked her watch. 2 hours until curtain. What's the plan? Play the piece, Marcus said simply. All of it. Even though it exceeds the time limit? Especially because it exceeds the time limit. Sophia grinned. Mrs. Harrington might actually explode on stage. That's a risk I'm willing to take. Marcus's smile faded. But there's something else you should know. About tonight's guest. James Wilson. Marcus nodded. He was my primary instructor at Juilliard. And he wasn't happy when I left. Sophia's eyes widened. Oh. That complicates things. Yeah. Marcus closed the score. So tonight might get interesting. As evening approached, performers gathered backstage. Mrs. Harrington moved among them, offering last-minute critiques and adjustments. She bypassed Marcus entirely. From behind the curtain, Marcus watched the auditorium fill. Faculty members, parents, students from other departments. In the center of the front row, an empty seat was reserved with a small placard, Mr. James Wilson. Just before the house lights dimmed, the side door opened. A tall man with silver hair entered, accompanied by Dr. Townsend. Despite the years, Marcus would have recognized his former mentor anywhere. As they took their seats, James Wilson glanced toward the stage. For a moment, Marcus thought their eyes met through the curtain gap, but that was impossible. No one knew he was here. At least, not yet. Backstage buzz intensified as word spread about James Wilson's arrival. Students peeked through curtain gaps, whispering excitedly about the famous pianist sitting front and center. He looks intimidating, one girl murmured. I heard he's brutally honest with his critiques, another added. Marcus said nothing, memories flooding back. Wilson had indeed been demanding, but also fair, pushing Marcus harder than other students precisely because he recognized his potential. Their last conversation, when Marcus announced his departure from Juilliard, had been painfully brief. Wilson had simply said, "You're making a mistake you'll regret forever." Now, 5 years later, they were in the same room again. Dr. Townsend stepped onto the stage, welcoming the audience with practiced charm. We're especially honored tonight to have Mr. James Wilson with us, a true master of the piano whose contributions to classical music are immeasurable. Polite applause followed as Wilson acknowledged the introduction with a nod. Mr. Wilson is considering establishing a scholarship for promising pianists at Golden Hills, Dr. Townsend continued. Tonight's performances will showcase the caliber of students our program attracts. From her position near the curtain, Mrs. Harrington beamed with professional pride. This is a tremendous opportunity for our department, she whispered to Ms. Collins. Imagine the prestige of a Wilson scholarship. The performances began. Most students played competently if nervously, offering simple pieces appropriate to their beginner or intermediate status. Mrs. Harrington's favorite students received prominent placements in the program, their minor errors overlooked with indulgent smiles. Sophia performed Debussy's Arabesque No. 1 with surprising sensitivity. From his vantage point, Marcus could see Wilson's subtle nod of approval. As the evening progressed, Marcus's anxiety mounted. He hadn't performed publicly in 5 years. The muscle memory was there, but the confidence, that was another matter. During an intermission, he slipped away to a quiet corner, attempting to calm his racing heart. The sound of approaching footsteps made him look up. Dr. Townsend stood before him, expression unreadable. Mr. Johnson, a word. Marcus followed him to a small office adjacent to the backstage area. I've just had a most interesting conversation with Mr. Wilson, Dr. Townsend began, studying Marcus with new intensity. He claims to recognize your name from the program. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Is that so? Indeed. He seemed quite surprised to find a Marcus Johnson in our beginner piano class. Dr. Townsend leaned forward. He asked if you were the same Marcus Johnson who studied at Juilliard 5 years ago, a student he described as extraordinarily gifted. The moment Marcus had feared had arrived sooner than expected. What did you tell him? I said that couldn't possibly be the case, as our Marcus Johnson has demonstrated only modest ability. Dr. Townsend's eyes narrowed. Was I mistaken? The question hung in the air. Marcus considered his options: continue the lie or embrace the truth. You were mistaken, he finally said. I am that Marcus Johnson. Dr. Townsend's expression shifted from skepticism to confusion. But why would a Juilliard-trained pianist enroll in a beginner class? It's complicated. Uncomplicated. Dr. Townsend's tone hardened. Because right now, it appears you've been deliberately misrepresenting yourself to this department. Marcus explained briefly about his parents' death, his responsibility for Thomas, his gradual return to music. As he spoke, Dr. Townsend's expression softened slightly. I see. He sighed. But that doesn't explain why you've been hiding your abilities in Mrs. Harrington's class. I wanted to ease back into performing without pressure. But Mrs. Harrington. Marcus hesitated. She made assumptions about me from day one. What kinds of assumptions? The kind based on appearances rather than abilities. Understanding dawned in Dr. Townsend's eyes. Are you suggesting Mrs. Harrington treated you differently because of your race? I'm stating it directly, sir. She's done everything possible to discourage me, culminating in assigning me Rachmaninoff, not to challenge me, but to humiliate me. Dr. Townsend was silent for a long moment. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. Another pause. Mr. Wilson has requested to speak with you before your performance. Marcus's heart raced. Did you tell him I'm here? I didn't confirm anything. I said I would check if our Marcus Johnson was indeed his former student. Dr. Townsend stood. Now I know the answer. The question is, what will you do about it? Before Marcus could respond, a stagehand appeared at the door. 5 minutes until the second half, sir. Dr. Townsend nodded. Think carefully about your next steps, Mr. Johnson. This evening could either launch your return to music or end it before it begins. As he left, Marcus sat alone, the weight of his decision pressing upon him. Playing as he was capable would expose his deception but might also open doors long closed. Not playing to his ability would maintain his anonymity but perpetuate Mrs. Harrington's prejudice. The choice, ultimately, wasn't about music at all. It was about identity, who he was, who he wanted to be, and whether he was ready to reclaim the part of himself he'd set aside for Thomas's sake. When he returned backstage, he found Sophia waiting. Everything okay? She asked, noting his expression. Wilson knows who I am, Marcus whispered. Or suspects, at least. Her eyes widened. What will you do? Before he could answer, Mrs. Harrington approached, her smile tight. Mr. Johnson, you're up after the next performance. Remember, 5 minutes maximum. As she walked away, Sophia squeezed his arm. Whatever you decide, make it for yourself. Not for her, not for Wilson. For you. Marcus nodded, feeling a strange calm settle over him. The decision, he realized, had already been made the moment he'd accepted the Rachmaninoff assignment. All that remained was to play the truth he'd been hiding, from others and, perhaps, from himself. The morning of the recital dawned gray and chilly. Marcus woke early, his mind already racing with thoughts of the evening ahead. Thomas was in the kitchen, making coffee. Big day, Thomas said, sliding a mug across the counter. Marcus nodded, grateful for the caffeine. Wilson being there changes everything. For better or worse? I'm not sure yet. Marcus stared into his coffee. If he recognizes me, and Dr. Townsend implies he already has, there's no going back to anonymity. Thomas leaned against the counter. Would that be so terrible? Being recognized for who you really are. It's not that simple. It never is with you. Thomas's tone was light, but his eyes were serious. But maybe it should be. You play. People listen. End of story. Marcus wished it were that straightforward. But classical music had never been just about playing for him, it had been identity, purpose, future. Until it wasn't. I need to practice, he said, changing the subject. Thomas nodded, understanding the conversation was over for now. I'll be there tonight. Front row, if I can manage it. You don't have to. Wild horses, big brother. Wild horses. At the college, an unusual energy permeated the music department. News of James Wilson's attendance had spread, elevating the routine student recital to something momentous. Even Mrs. Harrington seemed affected, her customary severity tinged with nervous anticipation. During the morning's pre-recital review, she addressed each student individually, offering last-minute guidance. When she reached Marcus, her expression hardened. Mr. Johnson, given your limited progress, perhaps it would be best to select a different piece. Something more appropriate to your level. Marcus met her gaze steadily. I'll play the Rachmaninoff as assigned. The first 16 measures, then. As a sample. I'll need more time than that. Mrs. Harrington's smile was tight. We discussed time limits. 5 minutes maximum. Ms. Collins, standing nearby, interjected. Perhaps Mr. Johnson should withdraw entirely. To avoid embarrassment. Whose embarrassment? Marcus asked quietly. Mine or the department's? Both women stiffened. Mrs. Harrington recovered first. Your concern for the department is touching, if misplaced. You're free to play your assigned piece, or attempt to, but within the established parameters. As they walked away, Sophia appeared at Marcus's side. Subtle, aren't they? As a sledgehammer, Marcus agreed. Dr. Townsend's been looking for you, she added in a lower voice. Something about Wilson wanting to meet before the performance. Marcus's stomach tightened. I'm not ready for that conversation yet. You might not have a choice. Word is Wilson's arriving early for a department tour. Sure enough, at noon, a commotion near the main entrance signaled Wilson's arrival. Faculty members converged, welcoming him with effusive praise. From a distance, Marcus observed his former mentor, older now, more silver in his hair, but still commanding respect with his mere presence. Marcus ducked into a practice room, closing the door quietly. He needed space to think, to prepare mentally for what was coming. But barely 10 minutes passed before a knock interrupted his solitude. Dr. Townsend entered without waiting for a response. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Wilson has specifically requested to meet with you. Now. Now. Dr. Townsend's tone left no room for negotiation. He's in my office. The walk to the administrative wing felt endless. Marcus's mind raced with potential scenarios, none particularly comforting. What would Wilson say? What could Marcus possibly offer as explanation for his disappearance, his current situation? At the office door, Dr. Townsend paused. For what it's worth, I believe Mrs. Harrington has misjudged you, deliberately or otherwise. Perhaps this meeting is an opportunity to correct that. With that cryptic statement, he opened the door. James Wilson stood by the window, silhouetted against the gray sky. He turned as they entered, his piercing gaze finding Marcus immediately. 5 years fell away in an instant. Marcus Johnson, he said, his deep voice unchanged. The prodigy who vanished. Dr. Townsend discreetly exited, closing the door behind him. Professor Wilson, Marcus acknowledged. It's been a while. 5 years, 3 months, and approximately 16 days. Wilson moved to a chair, gesturing for Marcus to sit opposite. But who's counting? The hint of humor was unexpected. Marcus remembered Wilson as brilliant but stern, rarely given to levity. You disappeared, Marcus. No explanation, no contact. One day you were my most promising student, the next, gone. Wilson's expression turned serious. I made inquiries. Learned about your parents. I'm truly sorry. Marcus nodded, throat tight. Thank you. But that doesn't explain why one of Juilliard's brightest talents is now pretending to be a novice at a community college. I'm not pretending, Marcus began, then stopped at Wilson's raised eyebrow. All right, I am. But it's complicated. Uncomplicated. For the second time that day, Marcus explained his situation, Thomas's needs, his own gradual return to music, his desire to re-enter the classical world on his own terms. Wilson listened without interruption. When Marcus finished, silence stretched between them. You could have reached out, Wilson finally said. I would have understood. Would you? Marcus couldn't keep the doubt from his voice. The classical world isn't known for its flexibility or forgiveness. Perhaps not. But individual people within it might surprise you. Wilson leaned forward. Dr. Townsend tells me you've been assigned Rachmaninoff's third for tonight's recital. As a setup, yes. Wilson's eyes narrowed. Explain. Marcus described Mrs. Harrington's behavior throughout the semester, the subtle dismissals, the unreasonable expectations, the transparent attempt to force him out. You believe it's racially motivated? Wilson asked directly. I believe it's part of a pattern I've encountered my entire career, Marcus replied. Sometimes explicit, usually implicit. Always present. Wilson nodded slowly. I remember discussions about your place in the program at Juilliard. Comments made when you weren't present. You never mentioned that. Perhaps I should have. Wilson sighed. Classical music has a diversity problem, not of talent, but of opportunity and recognition. He stood abruptly. Tell me, Marcus. Can you still play the Rachmaninoff as you once did? I think so. It's been a while, but, no equivocation. Yes or no? Marcus met his gaze. Yes. Then play it tonight. All of it. Exactly as you're capable of. Wilson's expression was determined. It's time for Mrs. Harrington, and this department, to see exactly what they've been missing. As Wilson moved toward the door, he added, and afterward, we should discuss your future. 5 years is too long for talent like yours to remain hidden. Left alone in the office, Marcus felt a strange mixture of anxiety and exhilaration. Tonight would change everything, for better or worse. The anonymity he'd carefully maintained would be shattered. But perhaps, he realized, that had been inevitable from the moment he'd sat down at a piano again. The auditorium hummed with anticipation as the recital's final segment began. Backstage, Marcus stood apart from the other students, focusing inward, his fingers moving subtly through the Rachmaninoff's opening measures. Sophia approached, elegant in her recital attire. Thomas is here. Front row, left side. Marcus nodded gratefully. And Wilson? Center, front. Next to Dr. Townsend. She hesitated. Mrs. Harrington keeps glancing at him. She seems nervous. She should be, Marcus murmured. One by one, the remaining students performed. Some played well, others adequately, all within their assigned time limits. Marcus hardly registered their performances, his mind already at the piano, his body remembering the feel of the Rachmaninoff. Finally, only Marcus remained. Mrs. Harrington approached, her smile tight. Remember, Mr. Johnson. 5 minutes. As she walked on stage to introduce the final performer, Marcus caught a glimpse of Thomas in the audience, giving him a subtle thumbs up. Beside him sat an empty seat, saved for Marcus, after his performance. Everything had been arranged. Our final student, Mrs. Harrington announced, is Marcus Johnson, a beginning pianist who will attempt an excerpt from Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3. The condescension in her voice was unmistakable. From the front row, Wilson's expression remained neutral, though his eyes narrowed slightly. Marcus walked on stage, the spotlight warm on his skin. He adjusted the bench carefully, mindful of his back, then sat. The Steinway grand before him was far superior to his home upright, its action responsive, its voice rich. He closed his eyes briefly, gathering himself. When he opened them, he saw Thomas watching intently, Wilson leaning forward slightly, and Mrs. Harrington standing at the side of the stage, arms crossed. Without preamble, Marcus began. The opening notes of the Rachmaninoff filled the auditorium, delicate, questioning, building gradually. Marcus lost himself in the familiar terrain, his fingers finding each note with precision born of years of training. As he approached the first crescendo, he felt rather than saw Mrs. Harrington shift uncomfortably. 5 minutes came and went. Marcus continued playing, moving through the development with increasing intensity. The piece demanded everything: technical mastery, emotional depth, physical stamina, and Marcus delivered. His body remembered what his conscious mind had filed away: the subtle pedal work, the weight transfers, the precise timing. In the audience, confusion gave way to realization. This was no beginning student fumbling through an excerpt. This was a virtuoso performance of one of the most challenging works in the piano repertoire. Midway through, Marcus dared a glance at the audience. Thomas was beaming. Wilson watched with an expression of profound satisfaction. Dr. Townsend's mouth had fallen slightly open. And Mrs. Harrington, her face had drained of color, her posture rigid with shock. As Marcus approached the movement's conclusion, pouring every ounce of emotion into the final passages, he felt something unlock within him: joy, relief, a sense of reclaiming part of himself long suppressed. The final chords resonated through the hall, hanging in the air before dissolving into stunned silence. Then, chaos. Thomas leapt to his feet, applauding wildly. Others followed, hesitantly at first, then with increasing enthusiasm until the entire audience was standing, their ovation thunderous. Wilson remained seated, but his approving nod spoke volumes. Only Mrs. Harrington seemed frozen, her expression cycling through disbelief, anger, and finally, humiliation. Miss Collins beside her appeared equally stunned. Dr. Townsend recovered first, hurrying on stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus Johnson," he announced, as if introducing him for the first time. Marcus stood, bowing slightly, then turned to exit the stage. As he passed Mrs. Harrington, their eyes met briefly. No words were exchanged, none were necessary. Backstage, Sophia engulfed him in a hug. That was unbelievable. You should have seen their faces. Before Marcus could respond, Thomas burst through the stage door. "You did it. You actually did it." As brothers embraced, other students gathered, their expressions a mixture of awe and confusion. The backstage area quickly filled with faculty members, audience members, all wanting to speak to the pianist who had just redefined their expectations. Dr. Townsend appeared, looking both impressed and slightly concerned. "Mr. Johnson, that was unexpected. And far beyond the time limit." "Was it?" Marcus asked innocently. "I must have lost track." A small smile played at Dr. Townsend's lips. "Indeed." He gestured to someone behind him. "I believe Mr. Wilson would like a word." Wilson stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. "Welcome back, Marcus." The simple statement carried weight beyond its words. It was recognition, acceptance, an acknowledgement of Marcus's rightful place in the world he'd left behind. As they shook hands, Wilson added quietly, "We have much to discuss about your future." "My future includes my brother," Marcus replied firmly. "As it should." Wilson nodded. "But it can also include music, on your terms." The crowd parted suddenly, revealing Mrs. Harrington. Her composure had returned, though her complexion remained pale. She approached Marcus with a tight smile. "Mr. Johnson," she began stiffly, "it appears you've been less than forthcoming about your abilities." "It appears," Marcus agreed calmly, "that you've been less than accurate in your assessment of those abilities." A tense silence followed. Miss Collins materialized at Mrs. Harrington's side, perhaps for moral support. "Had I known your background," Mrs. Harrington continued, "would naturally have provided more appropriate guidance." "My background?" Marcus's voice remained level. "Which part, specifically, influenced your judgment?" Mrs. Harrington flushed. Dr. Townsend stepped forward, interrupting what promised to be an increasingly uncomfortable exchange. "I think tonight has been educational for everyone," he said diplomatically. "Including faculty." Wilson's laugh broke the tension. "Indeed. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come from unexpected sources." As the crowd dispersed, Marcus found himself surrounded by his small circle of supporters: Thomas, Sophia, Wilson, and, surprisingly, Dr. Townsend. The moment he had feared for weeks had passed, leaving not disaster but possibility in its wake. "So," Thomas asked, grinning, "what happens now?" Marcus looked around at the auditorium, at the piano still spotlit on stage, at the world he'd both left and reclaimed in a single evening. "Now," he said, smiling, "I play." The week following the recital passed in a whirlwind. Marcus's performance became the talk of Golden Hills Community College, spreading from the music department to the wider campus with remarkable speed. Students who had never spoken to him now approached with questions, congratulations, requests for impromptu performances. Mrs. Harrington was conspicuously absent. Rumor had it she had taken a sudden personal leave, though Miss Collins continued teaching her classes with noticeably subdued authority. On Friday afternoon, Marcus found himself in Dr. Townsend's office, joined by James Wilson. The department chair seemed transformed. Gone was the dismissive administrator who had backed Mrs. Harrington's assessment. In his place sat an engaged academic, eager to make amends. "We'd like to offer you a position," Dr. Townsend began without preamble. "Teaching advanced piano studies." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I don't have a teaching credential." "Your Juilliard training more than qualifies you," Wilson interjected. "And I've made some calls. Your former professors speak highly of your abilities, both as performer and instructor." "It would be part-time initially," Dr. Townsend added. "But with potential for growth." Marcus considered the offer. Teaching had never been his primary ambition, yet the idea held appeal, particularly at an institution where he could help ensure other students didn't face the prejudice he had encountered. "I'd need flexibility," he said finally. "My brother remains my priority." "Of course," Dr. Townsend agreed quickly. "We can work around your schedule." Wilson leaned forward. "There's more, Marcus. I'm establishing not just a scholarship here, but a performance opportunity with the symphony downtown. A community outreach program featuring promising pianists." "And you want me involved?" "I want you featured," Wilson corrected. "As our inaugural soloist." The offer was stunning, a direct path back into professional performance without the grueling audition circuit Marcus had dreaded. "Why?" he asked simply. Wilson's expression softened. "Because talent like yours shouldn't remain hidden. Because the classical world needs to change, and visible success stories like yours can help change it." As Marcus left the meeting, his mind reeling with possibilities, he found Sophia waiting outside. "Well?" she prompted, falling into step beside him. He summarized the offers. Her eyes widened with each detail. "That's amazing. You're saying yes, right?" "I'm considering it." Marcus glanced at his watch. "Thomas should be home soon. I want to discuss it with him first." Sophia touched his arm, stopping him. "Marcus, listen. Whatever you decide, what you did at that recital, it mattered. Not just for you, but for every student who's been underestimated." At home, Thomas was already waiting, homework spread across the kitchen table. His face lit up as Marcus entered. "Dr. Townsend called," he announced immediately. "Said there's paperwork for you." Marcus nodded, setting down his bag. "They've offered me a teaching position. And Wilson wants me to perform with the symphony." Thomas stared, then broke into a grin. "You're saying yes, right?" "That's exactly what Sophia said." Marcus sat heavily. "It's not that simple." "Actually, it is." Thomas closed his textbook decisively. "You've put your life on hold for 5 years, Marcus. For me. And I'd do it again." "I know. That's who you are. Thomas leaned forward. But I'm 17 now, not 12. I'm applying to colleges next year. It's time for both of us to move forward. Marcus studied his brother, no longer the traumatized child who had needed his constant presence, but a young man with his own developing identity. When did you get so wise? He asked softly. Learn from the best. Thomas grinned. So, you'll take the offers. Later that evening, as Thomas studied in his room, Marcus sat at their mother's piano. His fingers found the keys without conscious thought, playing not Rachmaninoff or Chopin, but a simple melody their mother had taught him when he was very young. His phone buzzed with a text from Wilson, decision. Marcus looked around the small apartment that had been their sanctuary for 5 years. It had served its purpose, providing stability when they needed it most. But perhaps Thomas was right. Perhaps it was time for new horizons, for both of them. He texted back a single word, yes. The following Monday, Marcus entered the music department with a new perspective. No longer a student pretending to be less than he was, but an instructor preparing to help others reach their potential. Dr. Townsend greeted him warmly, providing keys to a private studio and a schedule of classes. We've had unprecedented interest in advanced piano since your performance, he admitted. Students who never considered classical music are suddenly enrolling. In the main hallway, a new poster announced the Symphony's Community Concert Series, featuring Juilliard-trained pianist Marcus Johnson as the inaugural performer. Seeing his name in print, his true identity publicly acknowledged, felt surreal yet right. As he arranged his new space, a knock at the door revealed Sophia. Professor Johnson, she teased, eyes twinkling. Your first student awaits. I'm hardly a professor, he protested, but her smile was infectious. Not yet, she agreed. But you will be. Mrs. Harrington resigned, by the way. Effective immediately. Marcus absorbed this news without comment. Mrs. Harrington's departure wasn't cause for celebration, merely the natural consequence of a system finally recognizing its flaws. What about you? He asked. Still planning to major in music? And minor in education, she confirmed. Maybe someday we'll be colleagues. As she left, Thomas texted, killed your first class yet? Marcus smiled, typing back, about to start. Wish me luck. The response came immediately, you don't need luck. Just be yourself. Simple advice, yet it had taken Marcus 5 years and a confrontation he'd never sought to fully embrace it. Being himself, not hiding his talent, not diminishing his light to make others comfortable, not accepting limitations imposed by prejudice. As his first students filed in, Marcus stood tall behind the piano. This was his new beginning, not just a return to music, but a step forward into a future where he could help ensure others wouldn't face the barriers he had overcome. Welcome, he said, surveying the diverse group before him. Let's begin. Dear friend, stories like Marcus's remind us that talent exists in all communities, yet opportunities and recognition aren't always equally distributed. When we judge others based on appearance rather than ability, we not only harm individuals, we deprive our world of extraordinary gifts. Today, many still face the prejudice that Marcus encountered, their brilliance dismissed before they can demonstrate it. By recognizing and confronting our biases, we create space for everyone's light to shine. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content that challenges perspectives and celebrates the human spirit in all its diversity. Your support helps these important messages reach those who need them most.